When you hear these 5 songs on the radio, they sound completely different, but they all have something important in common. They're all built entirely from start to finish with the same 4 chords. Now you've maybe seen this 4-chord trick before, but today we're taking it a step further. By the end of this lesson, you're not only going to be able to play all 5 of these songs, but you're going to understand how to turn them into something really beautiful at the piano, and you're going to unlock music theory. And this isn't just boring textbook theory that feels like it doesn't have anything to do with what you're actually doing at the piano. This helps you get your hands dirty and really understand what's going on. It's going to allow you to learn your music faster, to really understand what's happening in your music, to play with more confidence, and actually enjoy the process along the way. Be sure to stick around until the end because I'm going to show you how you can use this system to unlock all of music theory. First things first, let's meet the chords that you're going to be dealing with today. For today, we're in the key of C major the entire time. So the first chord we're meeting is, surprise, surprise, C major. And the 3 notes we need for the chord C major are C, E, G. These are going to pop up in a different order, but we're going to learn it in sort of this standard traditional form, and then we'll mix and match a little bit. So we have C major, then comes G major, G, B, D, then A minor, A, C, E, and F major, F, A, C. There's an improvisation I want you to try out because it's going to help you reinforce which notes you need for each chord and really start to find these a little bit more automatically on the keys. I want you to say it like that intentionally at least a few times so that you're really making this connection between C, E, G, that's C major, A, C, E, A minor, F, A, C, F major, G, B, D, G major. And then you can just play that in circles for as long as you want and keep naming the notes if you want to. It's a really good exercise. It really helps reinforce the notes that you need. You can go faster, you can go slower. You can change the octave. And then just finish up on a C because we're in C major. I call this an improvisation because I want you to get used to this idea of sitting down and just playing around with chords a little bit, seeing how they relate to each other, how they sound in different orders, how they feel when you play them. So if you're not really familiar with these chords yet, you're going to start to feel at home with them. Because once you start to have a firm grasp on those 4 chords, then you're ready to start playing around with songs. And we are not using sheet music today. That is not the world that we're dealing with. We're going to be using either, you can use chord charts, or there's an app that I really recommend. It's called Chordify. Inside this app, you can pull up any song you want to learn. And basically what you do is you get to play along with a YouTube video. You can set the speed, you can slow it down. It shows you the chords, how they look on the piano, so that if you're not sure which notes you need, but after today, that's not going to be a problem for these 5 songs, but it walks you through everything. And the thing that can be frustrating about playing chord charts as a pianist is pianists sometimes really don't like to sing, and chord charts tend to work best if we sing. You get to play along with the original artists of these songs. It's the actual recording. When you sign up for the annual subscription, it comes to like $2 a month. Now that you're familiar with the chords, let's see how we can actually apply this to playing the song. So we're going to go in 4 phases. Phase 1 is really straightforward, really simple. We're going to start hands separately, and I'm going to show you a few options on how you can do this. So we're going to start with the song Champagne Problems by Taylor Swift. It's this classic chord progression that we already learned. So we start with C major, then G major, A minor, F major. So for now, you're playing with just one hand, or if that feels a little bit overwhelming getting those switches, you can also alternate. So I'm going to start with my right hand up here a little bit higher and the left hand in the middle of the piano. And so that would look something like this. Right hand on C major, left hand plays G, right hand plays A, left hand plays F. And then if you start to think about the melody of the song, it's, you took the night train for a reason, so you could sit here and miss her. Now You do not have to sing for this method to work for you because you can use this app that gives you the backing tracks. You get to play it with Taylor Swift instead of with your own singing or with my out-of-tune singing, and have all of the fun that you want there. I personally find this alternating method a little bit trickier than doing it just with one hand. But it's there as an option if it feels simpler for you, if you feel like you're tripping over your hand when you're trying to make those changes with just one hand. Once you get comfortable playing hands separately, then you can start playing the song with both hands playing the root position chord. This gives you a little bit fuller sound, and it gives you this experience of starting to play hands together without doing too much hunting for different things for the separate hands. So that would look something like this. And you might notice you can use the pedal to sort of bridge the gap between those chords so that you don't have just silence in between. It sounds a little bit warmer and a little bit richer if you do it that way. That's it. That's phase one. Once you get that down, you can play all 5 of these songs from start to finish. You can do it on your own with singing or with humming or with whistling or with the backing track, however you want to do it. And you already have something that's starting to sound like music. And you're familiarizing yourself with these chords and starting to get used to the changes in different directions, which transitions tend to pop up a lot. C major to G major, C major to A minor, and so on. Once you feel comfortable with phase 1, you're ready to move on to phase 2. So in phase 2, you're going to be playing root position chords in your right hand, so the same form that we've seen the chords in already, and octaves in the left hand. So let's see how that would look with the song Don't Forget Me by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And this song starts on A minor, so let's get familiar with the order first. So the order in this song is A minor, F major, C major, G major. And there might be a little bit of a learning curve here because you're going to be playing the same chords in the right hand with the same fingering, everything that we've seen up until now. And the left hand is just playing octaves of what we call the root of the chord or the name of the chord. So for A minor, you play an A octave. For F major, it's an F octave. For C major, it's that C octave, and for G major, it's the G octave. It's not rocket science. So let's give this a try together with Chordify. That's all there is to it. It's not complicated. It's just adding those octaves. It's finding those jumps in both hands at the same time. Might feel a little bit awkward the first few times. That's why I really want you doing those root position chords hands together also, because it's getting you used to sort of keeping track of both hands. And the distance is going to be the same because it's still jumping down the 3rd, up the 5th, down the 4th, up the 2nd. It's just your left hand is going to be spread out over the octave instead of playing that root position chord the entire time. In this phase, you can also start thinking up ways that you can maybe rhythmically vary the music a little bit. So instead of playing just whole notes, essentially, the entire time, you can sort of start to imitate what you're hearing in that recording. So something like, or if you want to get really adventurous, simple rhythmic variations are a lot easier to bring in than arpeggiations and things like that. That's also worth playing with down the road, but I would say in phase 2, maybe start with just whole notes or whatever the rhythmic bass is that's moving, and then from there start bringing in some rhythmic elements, and then you can maybe think about ornamentation and so on later on. Once you're really comfortable playing these songs with the chords in root position in the right hand and octaves in the left hand, then you're ready for phase 3, which is bringing in inversions in the right hand. So for all of these phases, the left hand is more or less just going to be playing the root of each chord, so that name of the chord in octaves each time. The right hand is going to be the one that's doing a lot of adjusting for the most part. So really fast, what on earth are inversions? Well, we don't usually just hop around to chords every single time we have a different harmony. We usually see something, you've probably done this exercise actually, or something like that. Those are actually all inversions. The only chord that's in root position there is C major. Then we have, it's an F major chord and second inversion. We'll talk about what that means in just a minute. And then we go back to C major, G major in first inversion, back to C major. And inverting a chord just means that we're taking this basic form, this root position form, and we're shuffling it up a little bit. So we're taking that bottom note up to the top. So instead of C, E, G, you're going to be playing E, G, C. And this is why that first step in phase 1 is so important, of doing that improvisation and naming the notes in each chord. Because if you know which 3 notes you need for a chord, then you're not going to be tripped up as often by this chord. So this is C major in first inversion. E, G, C, still the same letters, so it's still the same chord, so it's still C major. It's just first inversion because it's the first time we've shuffled it. G, C, E, same story, second inversion because it's the second time we've changed it. We took that E up to the top. And then if we do it one more time, we're back to root position. So we only have 3 versions of every chord for now. We can do this with every single chord. I would recommend maybe practicing it a little bit before you try doing this step too much. So just go through each of the 4 chords and play all of the inversions. So C major, you're not gonna do it this fast. F major, G major, A minor. Right? You're going to do that slowly. Work up to doing it quickly. Good for you if you want to do that. But get familiar with the forms and how they feel. As long as you know which notes you need, you're not going to have any issue. After that very quick crash course in inversions, let's see why we need them, why they're useful. Because if we want to play these chords, it's fine. It sounds fine, but it sounds much nicer if we find smoother transitions. That's a really nice smooth transition from C major to F major and then back to C major, G major in first inversion, back to C in root position. Again, this is probably something you've learned with your scales at one time or another. And it's exactly what we need for Lean on Me. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. So you'll notice the left hand still does a good amount of jumping. The left hand will keep doing a lot of jumping. That's your bass line that we want to have the root of each chord in the bottom typically. But the right hand can have a much easier time and you can focus on just finding those transitions in the left hand instead of needing to do a lot of jumping in both hands. Here you can also start to bring in some sort of rhythmic pattern if you want. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow. Even something really simple like adding pulsing notes in one hand or doing like a 2-to-1 sort of thing. Even simple things like that help contribute to the atmosphere and the expression of the piece or the song. The nice thing that I want you to know is there aren't actually wrong answers here as long as you're playing the right chords. As long as you play the chord in one of its correct inversions, whether it's the closest or not, it doesn't matter. It's still going to sound like the song, you're still going to have the same effect, and you're still going to be able to tell what the music is. You're still going to be able to sing along and it's all going to work out beautifully. At the end of the day, it's just a piano brain teaser, essentially. Make it a game finding the shortest distance between each of the chords, and you can really have a lot of fun with this style of playing. Once you make it to phase 3, you really have something that sounds rich and full and rounded, very professional sounding in many ways. Then if you don't want to sing along, it's just if you're not playing with a recording, the melody is missing, which brings us to phase 4. In phase 4, we're going to keep octaves in the left hand, and you're going to start finding the melody by ear in the right hand. And remember, you're going to do this after you've completed those first 3 phases. So you're going to familiarize yourself with the chords, with the melody, with how everything sounds, with how everything fits together. So you're going to be well prepared for this step by the time you get to it. If you try to start here at phase 4 and skip over the first 3, you might be struggling a little bit, at least in the beginning. But let's see how this would look with the song Stronger by Kelly Clarkson. So we have, you know the bed feels warmer, sleeping here. You know I dream in color and do the things I want. So let's do that much. And then your first job is to find what's that starting note. That can sometimes be the hardest part, is finding what's the very first melody note. But once you get that, you should be able to kind of pick your way through. You're going to have to use a lot of trial and error. Playing by ear, especially in the beginning, involves a lot of trial and error. Using the chords can kind of help you find those notes a little bit, but it might be tricky sometimes also. So I think the chord is A minor. I think C is the starting melody note. Straightforward until there. I would need to practice it a few times, get a feel for it, listen to it a few more times, sing along a few more times. Singing along is also a really good way to get a feel for the melody, to figure out where things are headed, and just play around with it, see where it takes you. I would really encourage you to give this a try. Even if you don't sing, use Chordify, use that app that makes it a lot more fun instead of just sitting down and plunking out chords, because if you start to approach learning chords in this way, then you really start to understand how everything fits together. Once you start to understand how these chords relate to each other, how they move from one to another, and which transitions sound nice and which ones sound maybe a little bit clunky, then you start to understand things like why Beethoven wrote Moonlight Sonata, the opening like this. Instead of doing everything in root position, for example. That understanding, of course, doesn't develop overnight, but if you're the one who makes those executive decisions, you start to see on the keys which chords you're playing at any given time, and you're thinking in terms of harmony, which is only going to help you when it comes to memorizing your pieces, learning new pieces, reading new pieces, because you're going to start developing this radar for what chord is this, because then that's when you go from playing music note by note to understanding music as a language. And all thanks to sitting down and playing a couple of pop songs. If you learn just a few songs in every single key, if you just stick to these basics, 1, 5, 6, 4, if you go through that same progression in every single key and learn songs that have you actually using them and you actually being the one thinking about what's going on here, how do I do this, then you're going to understand your other pieces so much better in the long run. Not to mention that it's just a fun way to learn songs, and it's a fun way to sit down at the piano and have something that doesn't have the stress of learning lots of notes from sheet music and stressing over every single teeny tiny detail. There's no right and wrong answer here. There are some wrong answers, but It's not just black and white, right and wrong. You have a lot of options in how you approach these and how you sit down, and you get to be the one making those creative decisions. And that's also really empowering at the instrument. And if you do this really systematically, if you always learn the scale with these chords and a couple of songs in each of these keys, you're going to start to feel so at home, and you're going to automatically know this is A major, this is E minor, this is D major, and so on. You're just going to know, you're going to develop that intuition because you've gotten the mileage with these chords and you've gone through everything systematically. I can't wait for you to try this out. Let me know in the comments which of the 5 songs you're going to learn first, or if you're really going to sit down and do all 5 in one day. And which key do you want to see next? Are we going to G major or F major? Let me know in the comments. Majority rules. Until next time, happy practicing.